Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Wednesday, July 16th, 2025. I am Dave Biddle. I'll be joined by Matt Baxendell in just a moment. So, as you guys know, Ohio State has two new coordinators on each side of the ball, new coordinators on each side of the ball. Brian Hartline, of course, now really going to be the offensive coordinator. After 2 years ago, he had the title but wasn't really calling plays. Now he's going to be calling plays. What changes can we expect from Coach Hartline? I don't think he's going to reinvent the wheel, but he's going to put his stamp on this offense. And what changes can we expect? Bax and I are going to get into that. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Matt Patricia, what changes will he make compared to what we saw with Jim Knowles? It's interesting. On the defensive side of the ball, all the other coaches are still there. Offense, you have Tyler Bowen, as the run game coordinator now coming in, O-line coach, taking over for Justin Fry as well as a new coordinator. But then you also have Ryan Day as the head coach. So if things go astray on offense, Coach Day can just step in. But I don't think things are going to go astray on offense. I think Buckeyes are going to be more than fine. We're going to get into all that and more. And before we do that, I want to let you guys know about our friends over at Cornbread Hemp. This is their THC seltzers. It's a great product. Are you guys ready for your healthy happy hour? Cornbread's THC gummies and their seltzers offer a balanced sense of happiness and relaxation. They came up with America's first USDA organic THC edible, and they're proudly grown in Kentucky. They have 10 milligrams of THC per gummy for just the right dose. It's perfect for taking the edge off without making you feel anxious or paranoid like other cannabis edibles. Cornbread uses no harsh solvents and no synthetic ingredients, unlike most hemp THC products. Cornbread's gummies are Farm Bill compliant and legal for adults over 21. And again, don't forget about their seltzers too. Bam. All right. If you're looking for a healthier way to enjoy a carefree moment, you have to give Cornbread Hemp a try. They've created the first ever USDA organic THC gummy that's 100% legal. Here's where you guys really need to pay attention. As a special offer for Bucknuts Morning 5 listeners, you can get 30% off your first order. Pretty good. Just visit cornbreadhemp.com/Bucknuts. Use promo code Bucknuts at checkout. Again, that's cornbreadhemp.com/Bucknuts. Use code Bucknuts for 30% off your first order. Cheers to a healthier happy hour. All right, and let's say cheers to Matt Baxendell. Bax, welcome in. Good to see you.
Good morning, Mr. Biddle. How we doing here?
Doing good. I ate well last night. Had a lot of crab legs. And by a lot, I mean a lot.
You not sharing son of a bitch, you. For everybody who's tuning in, Dave tells me, hey, let's go to the casino last night. Leaves out the part about, hey, it's all you can eat crab legs night. That might have influenced my decision.
See, guys? I invited him, but I had to tell him it was all you can eat crabs or he wasn't going to go. So I just wanted to see what kind of friend I was dealing with here. So he's like, I don't want to go. And then he learned that there was all you can eat crabs. And he's like, oh, I should have went. I'm like, you were invited.
That distance of a drive to see you, that distance of a drive for the crab legs, now I'm interested.
That's fair. That's fair. I like crab legs more than me, too.
I would have probably brought a few Baxendells in tow. There's a certain Mrs. Baxendell that I think crab legs may be her favorite dinner. So,
and all you can eat's the way to do it too, because then you're not trying to get every little piece of meat out. It's work doing. It's work getting some crab legs. But yeah, that was really good at the casino last night. We had an event there for the All-Star game, so yeah, I was hard at work at the casino last night. All right, let's start with the offensive side of the ball. I mean, I don't think Brian Hartline's going to come in here and reinvent the wheel. I mean, he's got Ryan Day looking right over his shoulder. It's not like this is still Ryan Day's offense. But what tweaks, this will put it to you like that, what tweaks do you expect from Coach Hartline this year?
Well, I think we may actually be a little more reliant on the passing game this year. I think we may see a little bit more of the multi-receiver settings than we did last year. Think about it. You had the best pair of tailbacks in the country last year. So naturally, if they're going to look at the personnel and say, well, we have the best wide receivers in the country this year, we should lean into that a little bit more. I think that's probably more of a philosophical thing, though, than a X's and O's thing that you're going to look at. I think they're going to rely a little bit more on some shorter passes. I think you're going to see some of these, tunnel screens and things like that coming into play a little bit more. But I think that's just recognizing that your personnel that you have right now at the receiver position is just so elite that you have to try to get the ball in the hands of Carnell Tate and J.J. Smith. It's just that simple. So I don't know if that's necessarily a Brian Hartline thing, but that's my personal expectation, just looking at what the roster looks like at this point.
Yeah, I just and this is a good point too, like from Sage, Ohio. I mean, Heartland was able to like maybe take a few things from Chip Kelly that he maybe
Mhm.
otherwise wouldn't have implemented, you know. And again, having Coach Day right there with them, they're going to be game planning together. Obviously, we'll see how Tyler Bowen does. That's interesting because Justin Fry, I can already tell. I know I'm not breaking news here, Bax. I can already tell that Bowen is an upgrade over Fry as a recruiter. But Fry was a
Mhm.
heck of a good like O-line coach, and also has the title of run game coordinator. So I wonder how Tyler Bowen's going to be like as an on-field coach. But yeah, I don't think we're going to see too many tweaks from Hartline. You think they'll probably throw the ball more? That just makes sense to you, even with the
I,
quarterback.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to necessarily be Texas Tech here, guys, but I do think you're going to see a higher percentage of passing plays. But you also hit something very interesting on the head there. Is what did Brian Hartline as a receiver learn from Chip Kelly, who did a lot of really interesting things in the run game. He did a lot of counter stuff that was totally confused defenses. You have to think that as Brian Hartline gets a little more experienced in being involved with the overall essentially running of the offense versus just being part of game planning, he's going to learn more about the passing game. I remember 10 years ago, we were all talking about how Luke Fickell, when he was taking over defenses, was really familiar with the front part, but maybe couldn't handle pass coverage as well early on. That was things that Luke had to learn from more experienced guys. And now you may be seeing something like that with Brian Hartline, a little bit of, what has he added to his repertoire in terms of being really able to truly understand some of the heavier concepts in the run game that as a receivers guy, he's not as focused on a day-to-day basis until he's a coordinator. So these are things that we're going to have to watch. And, the good news is Ryan Day is still sitting right there. It's not like Ryan Day is going to be like, and I'm never walking in the offensive room again. So he's going to have a heavy role in it. But I think this is going to be Brian Hartline's, baby steps this year as being essentially the guy. I don't think you're going to see Ryan Day take play calling away or anything mid game, but I do think it's going to be a very collaborative effort between the two of them this year at the top of the offensive heap for us.
And geez, I mean, so many mouths to feed on offense. I mean, you've got the best collection of
Yeah.
wide receivers in the country. When Mylan Graham is your number 4 receiver, and maybe he's number 5. I don't know. Maybe he'll be number 3. Now, I don't think anybody's gonna get past Brandon Ennis to be number 3. But when Mylan Graham's your number 4 receiver, life is good. He was number 2. I'd say life was good. You had J.J. Smith as the starter, and Mylan was the number 2. I'm like, that's good, really good. Instead, you have Carnell Tate as the number 2. You got Brandon Ennis as the number 3. Mylan Graham, Quincy Porter. They like Bryson Rogers. Heartland always talks up Bryson Rogers. That's 6 right there. And then Bax, this is the best tight end room I've seen at Ohio State as far as
Yeah.
depth. I mean, Max Clare, getting him, even if they didn't get Max Clare, which I'm thrilled they did, I thought they were in a pretty good spot with tight ends. With bringing Kazmarek back, he's a hell of a great blocker, and he can catch the ball a little bit. Big boy. They really, really, really like him. Keenan Bailey calls him the best blocking tight end in the country. And then you have Jelani Thurman, who looks like he's ready to explode, right? And then you got like other guys like Bennett Christian. The young guy Roberts looked good. And then you get Max Clare. I mean, just unbelievable, this tight end room. I think they got the best wide receivers in the country. I think everybody would agree with that. I think they might have the best tight end room in the country.
Well, Max Clare was a borderline All American last year at
Right.
frickin' Purdue. I mean, like Purdue stunk last year, Dave. And so, I don't think he's going to see the same volume of balls this year just because it's going to be very difficult for him to be able to find his way into a giant slice of the pie when you have those receivers in the passing game. But the tight end room is really, really, really good. And what do they always say the best friend of a new starting quarterback typically is? It's a tight end. So I wouldn't be surprised to see all those guys still getting a lot of passes thrown their way this year. But like you said, there's so many mouths to feed, and we haven't even talked about the tailbacks who are going. You have to run the football. We're in Ohio, okay? Well, this is Ohio State. We all know you have to run the football. We're not sitting here advocating saying throw the ball 2 out of 3 plays like it's the new NCAA video game. All right, you have to run the football, but there's a lot of weapons through the air that are gonna. I wouldn't want to try to defend against this passing game. Let's put it that way. Dave, I think you're muted.
Thank you. All right, let's get to Facebook question from Eugene. We'll keep this to offense and we'll get to defense in a moment. Eugene on Facebook: where are the Buckeyes most vulnerable, and what should Coach Day do about it? Offensively, I mean, I would say we talked about this a little bit on Monday's show. I'm a little concerned with how the RPO game is going to look this year because Will Howard was so good at that, and Julian Sayen's not really much of a running threat. At least he didn't show it in high school. Maybe he can be. I guess that would be maybe I don't know what Coach Day is going to do about it, but the lack of a quarterback running threat concerns me because we've seen this before. Will Howard was the exception to the rule. Even when they had C.J. Stroud, they didn't really have a running threat at quarterback. So, but he was such a great passer, it almost didn't matter. But I think that's the one area on offense that I'm a little concerned about.
Yeah, that was the first thing that popped into my head too. Is that Julian Sayin is not what you would classify as a typically mobile quarterback, nor does he have the giant frame that Will Howard had that he could kind of barrel forward when he needed to. And I think that's going to be really interesting to watch. And I don't want people to sit here and start thinking back to when we had Kyle McCord as a complete statue in the pocket. But Sayin's going to have to show the ability to move around a little bit back there. He's going to have to find a way to be able to feel the rush and move around. And, the RPO game, you can still do. It's still going to be a factor, right? And it's going to be on Sayin to still read the play. When we talk about RPOs, guys, we're not talking about like the classic read options where it's like, does Braxton Miller keep the ball or pitch it to Carlos Hyde? It's a very different style of option here. So, if Sayin is reading the RPO, the other thing is Sayin is 4 inches shorter than Will Howard. So he's going to have to see over some big linemen. If you're running an RPO looking to see whether a receiver's open or not, I mean, usually you key on a defender in that situation to see how the defender reacts. And then you decide whether to give the ball to the tailback at the mesh point or hit the guy out in the field. But those are things it takes time to learn. But, I think from a classical perspective, Julian Sayin is not a running quarterback. But, from a processing perspective and from a quarterbacking perspective, a lot of the RPO that we're going to run there, how does he do it? Because you're right, Will Howard that was maybe the best thing Will Howard did was read the RPOs well. And at the end of the day, we're going to have to see whether Sayin can do that or not. And he's going to have to start off in the crucible of the game against a Texas team that brings back most of its defense. So we're going to get some answers early, I think, on that. But, I think when you're talking about having another quarterback come on the field to be a, quote, running threat like Keenholz, then it tells you that we're probably not going to have much running from our starting quarterback. So it'll be interesting to watch that play out.
You read Mika's mind. I was going to cue this up for you, and I did anyway on YouTube. Mika, do you think Lincoln Keenholz gets a package of plays? What do you think, Bax? Consistently, like when they go in that Texas game, you think they're going to have a couple of packages for Lincoln, or you not buying that?
No. The last time we saw this happen at all was when JT Barrett and Cardell Jones were trying to figure out who was playing, and JT was the red zone quarterback.
McCord and Brown. It just didn't pan out. Remember, they were going to do it with McCord and Brown, but that Indiana opener ended up being a lot closer than what they expected, so they just left McCord in.
Yeah, that's my point, though. It never happens. They talk about it all the time. They want the other teams to theoretically prepare for it. We'll see it against, like, Grambling, and then it'll never happen again. That's usually how these things happen because they don't want to change the flow of the offense. So the hardest thing you can do is switch a quarterback in and out, right? The old saying, if you have two quarterbacks, you have none. So I have trouble believing that they're going to have Julian Sayin take the team down the field 60 yards and then start putting Keenholz in to be the runner. And it's not like Keenholz is Braxton Miller either. Like he's a super athlete. He's won state championships in high school and all these sports. Looks like a winner. I love Keenholz, but it's not like you're bringing in Braxton Miller on the goal line here.
Right, or even Will Howard. God, they got so many.
Yeah, Will Howard.
So many easy first downs. He had a lot of touchdown runs. That was just something that was missing from the Ryan Day offense. That kind of took the offense to another. I don't know. They're just a lot more dangerous because they went from one of the worst teams in college football, not just in Power 4, but period in college football in short yardage, goal line, especially from 2023, and then they were one of the best in 2024. Maybe I'll have to go back. I think statistically they were the best. When they got inside the 5, they were scoring a touchdown. You were not stuffing them on 3rd and 1 like you were the previous years. I mean, everybody gets stuffed every once in a while, but they were very, very efficient. That's because the defense had to account for a quarterback that could run and run well and could could trick them a lot. So we'll
I
see.
have a thought on that too, Dave. I think there's also a philosophy change that Ryan Day had last year because I think Will Howard was the first like Robotron-sized quarterback that he had in the backfield too. He was always very nervous about Stroud running because he didn't want to get him hurt. McCord couldn't run, right? So I think he looked at Will Howard and said, "This guy can hold up to it." We're not going to look at Julian Sayin and say he's going to hold up to getting beat up in the running game. He's 6 foot tall. He's not 6'4" or 6'5" like Will Howard was. He's significantly lighter. Will Howard had the big body where I think Ryan Day said, "Let's go. You can do it." It's not going to necessarily be the same for a lighter guy like Sayin.
All right, let's get to defense, my friends. I'm trying to get everybody who's just checking in, Tom on Facebook. Like hearing from the people out there, the live audience. All right, so defense. Matt Patricia taking over. It's interesting. All the other defensive coaches are still there. So Tim Walton and Guerreri and Laurinaitis and LJ's probably like, we're good. We don't need to reinvent the wheel here. But Matt Patricia is going to put his stamp on this defense. I've been saying a lot more odd fronts is the one thing I'm pretty convinced we're going to see a lot more odd fronts. I mean, it just makes sense. He likes doing that anyway. Now, he likes adjusting his scheme to the strength of his players. That's first and foremost with Patricia. But he's done a lot of 3-4 in the past. It makes a lot of sense. They don't like their depth at D tackle, but they like Caden McDonald and Edric Houston a lot. They do like their depth at defensive end. They like their top 3 linebackers a lot. So I think we're going to see a lot more odd fronts this year. Anything else you think they might sprinkle in? And just what do you expect from Patricia in year one?
I won't be surprised if we see Caleb Downs used as a bit of a roving hammer in this defense, more even so than last year. When you go to a 3-4 kind of set or an odd front kind of set, I very vividly remember a team that ran a set like that had a total wild man at safety all over the field. You might have heard of Troy Polamalu. You could see a lot of uses where you're going to have Caleb Downs near the line of scrimmage, sort of in that way. I mean, Caleb Downs is the most unique defensive player, most versatile defensive player maybe in college football. So I think Matt Patricia looks at him and goes, "Oh my gosh, I can use him in any role." And I do agree with you on the fact that they like the top 2 D tackles, but they're not high on the depth. And that's a situation that means you're probably going to only try to have one of them on the field sometimes to try to keep the other one fresh so that you're not getting into that depth that you're as uncomfortable with. And I said this too earlier in the year. You and I talked about it, Dave. You're going to see a modern version of the Rushman. They have a lot of good D ends. You may have a lot of situations where you have 3 defensive ends on the field because they think it's a passing down. So that'll be interesting to see. But I think kind of using Caleb Downs as even more of a wild card than they already did last year is going to be something that I won't be surprised to see from Ohio State this year.
Go back to Eugene's question on Facebook, this time focused on defense. Where are the Buckeyes most vulnerable, and what can Coach Day do about it on defense?
This is the obvious one, right? It's the depth of D tackle, right?
Yep.
If you're not stout up the middle, if you can't roll in 4 or 5 guys over the course of a game to play that position, you might wear down. That's my biggest fear right now with this team. Is are they going to hold up against the heavy power run games this year when people just go right up the gut? Are we going to have the depth to be able to handle that? And that's going to be by far the biggest concern to me, by far, on the team is how are the D tackles over the course of the season. We have one injury and you're down to 1 D tackle the coaches trust. That's a problem. So the young guys are going to have to step up this fall. It has to happen, period. If you want Ohio State to do all these things that we want them to do, like beat Michigan and beat Michigan and beat Michigan, then, at the end of the day, you have to have these guys grow and step up and move forward. And D tackle to me right now, like you got a couple hosses up top, but the younger guys have to step up.
Yeah, so I'm looking. I think Will Smith Jr. Larry Johnson had some nice things to say about him during spring, sometimes unprompted. And you read between the lines, it sounds like they still need to see more from Jason Moore, Tywone Malone. Mensa's still pretty young, but he's a redshirt freshman. Maybe they can get something out of him, and he's a little bigger. I mean, they list him at 308. Eric Mensa, I think he's probably more like 315 if I had to guess. He's got a little bit of that floppy belly, a little bit. Not Caden McDonald. I love Caden McDonald. I think he's going to be.
Caden McDonald is like the 2009 Bucknuts front row dream defensive tackle. The big floppy belly DT. You remember those days? Why can't we get a big floppy belly DT from the South?
From the South.
Well, we got one right there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Exactly. And that's why I'm glad they got. Actually, Jameer Perez actually is, for a big guy, is pretty strong. It's pretty well put together. I don't know if I should say Jameer Perez has a floppy belly, but if he does, all the better. Give me these 340-pound nose guards. I love them. Give me some Vince Wilforks if you can.
Yeah, Ted
Cade is
Washington.
going to be really good. We know Edric Houston's going to be good. At least I think he will be. I mean, he played a lot. I mean, relatively played a lot as a true freshman last year, even though they had a lot of good depth at D tackle. When you're bringing Cade McDonald off the bench, you got good depth. And man, Cade McDonald played well off the bench last year. Excuse me.
He was a war daddy inside. There's no other way to describe him. I mean, like the Penn State goal line stand, McDonald was a huge part of that. I think he made 2 of the tackles. He moved the pile. Like that is the kind of guy that blows up an offense. There's a reason that like a guy that can do that at the NFL level is paid an exorbitant sum of money because you literally blow up what the other team's offense is doing when your D tackle is that disruptive. McDonald is awesome, but those guys also can't play 70 snaps a game.
Right.
It's just really hard to do. You have to have depth. Houston and McDonald are not my worries. Houston was everything we hoped he'd be coming in as a 5-star that we held on to by the skin of our teeth over Alabama on in recruiting. I mean, I remember that. Ryan Day was so relieved when we got him. But at the end of the day, like you have to have more than just those 2. And these younger guys have to show that they can get on the field against Big Ten opponents and be able to be productive. And if not, you have to scheme around it. That's the only real honest answer I can give you here.
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about everything. I was going to get to this. Mika Jarquez Carter in all caps. I love it because listen, I'm not counting on him to play a lot this year, but he enrolled early. He was extremely productive in high school, playing against top competition in Florida. I like Jarquez Carter. I think he can be like. I think Will Smith is going to be the top backup D tackle. But I've also said they need one of those true freshmen, just one of them, to be able to add some quality depth. And I agree with Mika. I think if I had to pick one of those true freshmen, it would be Jarquez Carter.
The big question with me is he still 280 or is he 310? What has the early enrollment done to his size? Because that's he was like 6'1", 280 in recruiting. And everything you watched in him, like he's one of those guys that like the measurables aren't perfect, but he's a football player. So they're like, put it this way, going back to the Cooper principle, that's a pup that I think will bite early right there. But the question is he big enough to hold up when it's Texas's D-line or offensive line coming at you, when it's Penn State's offensive line coming at you? Part of that's like getting that weight up to be able to really hold up against 300-pound men. So I could see it. I certainly could see it. The question is he added that last little bit? Because that's a player that looks like a dog to me.
Definitely. And you can get away with being a little lighter. I think, you can't be 280. But if he can get up to 290, I think that's fine for a guy that's just barely above 6 foot tall. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to be like Aaron Donald or like Geno Atkins, but if he is, all the better. But yeah, man, if he can just be super quick and strong, that low center of gravity, I think Carter can be a dude. All right, let me ask you real quick. So these, I know you talked about this in the bucket. The stuff with these NIL deals getting shot down, the lawyers are arguing about it, and the NIL clearinghouse, they don't care. They're like, nope, if it comes through a collective, we're basically shooting it down. I mean, end game here. Who wins?
Well, Deloitte's not going to change their policies. I said this a month ago on this show with you, and everybody's like, they don't understand how football works at Auburn. No, I think we understand how it works at freaking Deloitte. There's 500,000 people worldwide. They audit governments. Like, Deloitte's not going to change its principles for pissy little NIL deals in college football. This is not going to change. So Deloitte's not going to change their minds, and the lawyers can throw a fit about this settlement all they want. But it's sort of settled at this point. They can't go back and really relitigate something that's already done. So to me, it strikes me as the lawyers who, by the way, Dave, their net payout, all these lawyers that have been involved in this process, is something like $700 million.
That's
so I think that's who's winning. And I think they're like, well, if we can suck another 50 mil out of this deal, let's go for it, right? They're, of course, going to chase it. But Deloitte is not going to change what they're being told by the clearinghouse to do.
I agree with that, but what about when it gets in front of a judge?
I think the judge is going to say we have terms of agreement in place related to revenue sharing, and we've already come to an agreement about a legitimate business enterprise. What business does a collective have if we're being objective, Dave? It is to further the success of the football team. There's no actual business. You know what I mean? The collectives are intended to help compensate student athletes. What they want these deals to be is not, hey, I'm a student athlete who makes appearances on behalf of the collective and gets paid exorbitantly for it. What they want is to say, hey, the comparative contract for a endorsement deal that player X makes with insurance company Y and acts in these different positions is this, and they're going to compare it to NFL players with larger profiles. So, you may Jeremiah Smith is going to get paid through the nose to do that kind of stuff because he's as famous as some of the guys in the NFL already. But if you're the standard fare 50K a year NIL guy who's on campus that nobody knows about, you're going to be held to an actual fair principle of market value, and that's going to be a fight back and forth on it. But at the end of the day, like that's based on the letter of the law, this agreement. I think Deloitte is reading it correctly. There's no legitimate business enterprise for a collective to pay a player. The collective's job is to collect money from people and give it to the players. So that this is sort of changing the game to me, and I won't be surprised one bit if we start getting the casino ATM withdrawal cards down in Southern Alabama again real soon, because this is going to be unapproved stuff.
Oh yeah, the bagman's gonna be back. Yeah, I hope. I hope when because this will definitely one of these kids, multiple these kids that are getting these NIL deals shot down, will take it to court, and I'm fascinated to see what happens. Because here's the thing, I mean, with no CBA, I don't know. As Jam is saying, without a CBA, how can you restrict earnings in this country? I don't see how that would hold up. I also
Well,
understand Deloitte not changing what they do, but I could see a judge siding with what the Supreme Court said 4 years ago, as opposed to this settlement, the House settlement earlier this
it,
year.
it will be interesting because we've talked for years, you and I, about collective bargaining being where these student athletes eventually have to go to. But student athletes, by definition, are a transient class. So it's really hard to get a athletes union in place to collectively bargain or wage sharing like an NFL level. And in fact, the players aren't that invested because this is a pass through to what their ultimate end goal is. Now, when you're talking about players that are making millions of dollars a year, all of a sudden there's a little more money involved. So I don't know. You see this a lot too, where people kind of shop a judge that they think is friendly to their cause, and it happens from people arguing about government policy to national things like this all the time, where they're like, the NFLPA used to always file in the Minnesota court, remember, because they thought that judge was more friendly to the player causes than other places around the country. Like this is it's just how it's going to go. They're going to find a judge who agrees with them, but then it's going to be another multi-year fight, and it's going to go the way to the Supreme Court. That's what I think is going to end up happening. And so the Supreme Court's docket's going to be all these serious things, and then college football paying players.
Yeah, and I mean the one I referenced, like Alston versus NCAA, that was the one that went to the Supreme Court 4 years ago that I keep referencing, and that wasn't technically about NIL, but the language is clear that you can't restrict how much athletes get compensated, like in addition to what they get for their scholarships. So we'll see what happens. That's the thing, man. That we thought we hoped that this was like the I don't know, the conclusion, the resolution to all this. I don't know, man. It feels like it's still the first inning to me. We'll see. But great stuff from Matt Baxendell. You can read his awesome column every Sunday. It is the bucket. Thank you to Bax. Thanks to all of you out there. We appreciate it very much. Hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Go Bucks. Still basking.
Go Bucks.